Hello everyone, and welcome to the Bay of Bengal Conversation, the studio session. My name is Ario Bimo and I will be moderating this session. And the discussion of the session is Development for All, Pathway to Sustainable Growth. As we know that sustainable development is a pressing need in the globalized era, and the United Nations have now stipulated that by 2030, we will be fulfilling a target called the Sustainable Development Goals. Now, with approximately 5 years remaining, it remains to be seen whether we can achieve this so-called development for all. The most pressing need nowadays is to make the sustainable development not only sustainable but also inclusive for everyone, meaning that there should be no one left behind, and in doing so, we have to achieve the targets that is also can also embrace the people. So with me now, we have two amazing speakers. The first one is Ms. Judith Mwaniki. She is from the Consortium for Economic Research and Development Studies, Kenya. And another speaker that I'm having beside me is also Ms. Samiha. She's a lecturer from Daffodil University in the Department of Development Studies. Okay, welcome everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so given your profiles are both in sustainable development, so let me begin with one simple question. What is sustainable development and which point of it are you focusing on? Because we know that sustainable development have 17 different goals, and of course you cannot focus on everything, so which point are you focusing on? Okay, let's begin with Ms. Judith first.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So sustainable development and growth is development that ensures that we are able to achieve economic, social, and even environmental progress, leaving no one behind. That is including and pulling in the vulnerable, and especially marginalized communities, even as we promote long-term sustainability. So it means the development we are doing today should not hinder or should not be at the expense of our tomorrow. The development of this century should not be at the expense of next century. And that is in terms of resources, in terms of human capital, and even in terms of our non-renewable resources. So I work mainly with smallholder farmers, which means a lot of what we're doing is addressing, first of all, zero hunger. That's our first target. But then you cannot, we say you cannot have progress if you have not addressed hunger. Then you now will be on the way to address poverty. So our second SDG goal is addressing poverty. But anyway, with the base on, first of all, ensuring zero hunger. Working with smallholder farmers is a very interesting aspect, because it brings you face to face with the challenges that the most vulnerable in the society face. You're able to see the effects when you talk about climate change. You're able to see the effect of climate change on their livelihoods, and not just as a community, but even at the household level and even at an individual level. And in efforts to ensure sustainable development, and all these efforts mean now it trickles down from the household to individual. It's you being able to see families' economic empowerment. It's you being able to see families moving from a level of poverty that they were in to something better to them. One, being able to put food on the table, being able to get an extra coin in the pocket, being able to send their children to school, being able to, and this is now development that can trickle down generations, not just the family at that point, but it's down to even generations that are to come. And so for me, sustainable development means inclusive economic growth. And for inclusive economic growth, there is need, first of all, like I've said, to ensure there is inclusiveness and sustainability. We cannot talk of inclusiveness if we're not looking at sustainability. If we're not looking at the efforts we're putting in today. Are they sustainable? Will we be able to rely on the same efforts for, say, tomorrow or next year? And also ensuring no one is left behind. So again, you cannot separate gender from sustainable development. Actually, gender is an anchor to sustainable development. And in the same way, another strong point that comes across is the young people. You have to support the youth and the women for every anchor or for any intervention for sustainable development. So, and even as you do that, most importantly, foster environmental sustainability. Ensure that this is not at the expense of environment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Judith, Mwaniki. So, interesting point that you point out some points like hunger, poverty, and also gender. And the third one is actually very interesting because sometimes we sideline it in the discourse of sustainable development. But yeah, I agree that gender is some sort of central point when you talk about inclusiveness, because there is no such thing as inclusiveness if we don't talk about equality between the genders. Okay, so next let's move to Ms. Samiha Khan. Well, you're a lecturer, so in your opinion, what is sustainable development, and do you have like a priority, or which point is your main priority in mainstreaming the sustainable development in your society?
Okay, I will mirror some of the great points that Ms. Judith mentioned. So sustainability or sustainable development to me means progress that ensures that the present generation is able to meet their needs without compromising the ability of the future generation to meet their needs. And for those of us who are interested in sustainable development or building a sustainable society, I think we are interested in making sure that policies are equitable and inclusive, and that they're able to meet the basic needs of everyone in society. So particularly my interest lies in the nexus between gender equality and climate action. Bangladesh is one of the most vulnerable nations to climate change. And what we often see is a lot of the policies that are made, while they're not necessarily intentioned like that, they do not take into context the gender sensitivities or how women in particular deal with the effects of climate change. I'll give you an example. Let's say we see that some parts of Bangladesh have made shelters where people can take refuge during storms and floods. However, women are a bit hesitant sometimes to go there because they're worried about sexual harassment. So we need to make policies that take those things into consideration as well, because I do not think we can ever achieve a sustainable society if we're not fighting for everyone. The second point that also Ms. Judith mentioned, the inclusion of youth. I think young people are very enthusiastic. They are very excited. They come up with very innovative solutions at the grassroots and community levels. But what we see is sometimes they do not receive the proper support to mainstream their ideas and to make their voices heard, or what we call procedural justice. People need to be able to take part in the official policy-making processes so that their needs are met and heard. So that's what it means for me.
Okay, interesting points. Yeah. So let's move on to the next question. Given you guys are from different countries, one from Kenya and one from Bangladesh, and I myself from Indonesia, so I just would like to hear more about what are your experience in empowering marginalized people in your current position and in your current country. So are there any strategies that you've been doing so far? And given that you've mentioned some of those points, how do you address it? And what do you think are the biggest challenges from those empowerment? Okay, let's begin with, again, Ms. Samiha Khan. Okay.
So in the context of Bangladesh, at the government level, there has been some interesting initiatives that have been trained at or aimed at women in particular, microcredit being one of them, which is the idea that, women receive small loans in order to start small businesses to support their lifestyle. While there's some criticism of it, it has been largely successful in empowering women. At the community and grassroots level, we see a lot of training being provided to women so that they're able to enter the workplace. We also obviously, with the rise of the RMG sector, we've seen a lot of women go from informal labor to formal labor, which has been beneficial not just for the economy but also for women. The most interesting thing that I've seen in the last year is women getting involved with e-businesses. So a lot of housewives who are at home, they'll start businesses selling clothes, selling handcraft materials, selling food. And they have been very, very successful. I've heard women tell stories about how through this, Facebook business, they've been able to send their sons and daughters to study abroad. So that has really been a very interesting thing that has happened in Bangladesh in the last few years. More women getting into entrepreneurship simply out of interest. So I'm hoping to see that become a little more formalized as part of our policymaking processes.
Okay, actually, I agree with you about the e-business because it's been a trend since the pandemic. Yeah. There's a funny story in Indonesia. There's a village, and one of the housewife was practicing e-businesses at home, and the neighbors were curious. How could you produce so much money when you never go out? And they accuse her of doing some sort of witchcraft, but actually it's just e-business.
Yeah,
that's interesting. It reminds me of the story back in my country. Okay, so let's move on to Ms. Judith Mwaniki. So what are your experience in empowering those marginalized people, given that you also work for the Consortium for Economic Research and Development Studies?
Maybe the point I'd want to bring across is on the role of technology and innovation. And now how technology innovation also ties up with being able to join the financial systems. So like in Kenya, we have what we call M-Pesa. M-Pesa is mobile money. You're able to send money, you're able to receive money, you can cash out, you can pay for goods, you can deposit the money in your bank account, you can access the funds in your bank account. And so now, anchoring on that, you look at the role technology plays in, first of all, in terms of extension services, agricultural extension services, and now also access to credit, because again, in the mobile money ecosystem, there is also a module for access to credit. But even as you get to that, remember most of the times for most financials, you either need to have security, you need to show how you pay back. So you either have collateral, or you have security or books. And remember, this is amongst smallholder farmers, there is no structured way of this is how our bookkeeping is done. It's estimates. But when we look at the role of now like digitization, means you're able to bring together people, you're able to even offer extension services. For instance, you're able to to integrate them in the financial systems and even get statements and be able to, to give them market access and linkage from the same. So when you look at like technology, we have people trying to collect data. First of all, noting that data is the drive, actually is a gold of our times. So basically we've been able to tell what, or rather cluster farmers into these are farmers who do this production, these are farmers who do this production. This is what they are doing right now. And with now access to inputs and access to credit, meaning you're able to sort of give them a not very technical system, but a small system where they're able to get their history and they're able to run across the agri-value chain from inputs, say fertilizer, farm preparation to seed, to production, to if there's need for pesticides, to market, and still among that ecosystem, have a follow through of the same. Then have modules that give access to credit. They're able to borrow from within the same module. You're able to tell after this, like follow through with the intervention. So it means intervention is not just seed or money you're throwing into, but you're able to critically follow through that chain. Then again, with financial inclusion means farmers are able to participate in the national payment system. They're able to integrate, they're able to get integrated into that system. And this way they can now rotate amongst. And even over and above that, like she puts across the issue of now bettering and being, for them even being able to send their children to school and all that. And all this is coming from, as a role, or rather coming from what technology is able to do for them. they're able to follow through even with issues as small as sometimes it's like for fruits. There's an app that allows fruit farmers to be able to tell if I'm buying a seedling, I'll just scan the leaf and I'm able to tell, is this, say it's a mango seedling, and this sort of mango, and this mango's expected output is this much, and this mango is expected, the seedling is expected to fruit in this long. In terms of maintenance, this is, or rather in terms of good husbandry, this is what is expected of me. This is how I should maybe water. This is the fertilizer I'm supposed to give, after how long. And it's something very simple. It's just a very simple app, but just with a scan, it gives a whole background. And for farmers now, this becomes very important because you're not working from a lack of information, but you have so much information with you at the click of a phone.
Okay. So some points that I point out. So in Kenya, you're focusing on the role of technology and digitalization. And also talking about digitalization, we also talk about the change of behaviors. So in your opinion, have you noted some challenges in implementing those initiatives to the farmers, or are there any thing that you would like to expect more from the government or from the external stakeholders in making this effort more efficient?
I think the biggest challenge has always been the youth don't want to venture into farming.
The youth? Okay.
Yes, because for them, it's not, they don't like the returns. So it's easier to leave the farms and go to towns, look for formal employment. Yet agriculture, if well managed, can actually employ not just the people working on the farm, but it's a whole chain from farm to supply chain to processors to producers to marketers.
Okay.
So part of what we are working on doing is, one, making agriculture high return, noting that we are living, farmlands are more or less static. Then also what's happening is a lot of people prefer to sell out their land, subdivide into smaller portions and sell. So farming land diminishes by the day. But then even with the small available tracts or pieces of land, what can we do to make that available acreage produce more? Moving people from what they've typically and traditionally produced to do a lot of different initiatives. For instance, a traditional wheat or maize growing family doing additionally, say, chicken or rearing pigs. And then now again, after they've done chicken, if it's chicken for eggs, how do you get that to the market? So how do you do that market linkage? So, and we've had in the recent past a few young people actually coming up with doing farming that looks attractive, that's making people rethink there is actually money in farming, and farming is not just for the old people. Because actually, even if you look at like journals, when you see photos of people that are shown as farmers, it's always an old person. You barely find like a picture of a young person representing a farmer. So there is this already connotation sort of that farmers are old people. And before we decolonize the minds from, farming, first of all, is a lucrative venture. And secondly, there's a lot more to farming than now leaving it for the older people. I mean, someone has to feed the population even as they go to towns. So it's the trying to bring in younger people into the farm, whatever, because they're also the people that are dynamic, they are open to new ideas. They also don't have fixed mindsets. So if you're trying to do something new with them, it's easier. They will even grasp the ideas very fast. They'll get the concepts. They're also open to experimenting, to try. Remember, sometimes farming is, you can try and your crop goes. So it's a lot of open-mindedness for you to be able to change. But it's something we're working to see change. And, also have support, one from partners, to implement now youth-friendly farming programs.
Okay, surprisingly, Kenya and Indonesia have the same problem. So the youth are not so interested in agriculture. So, and there is a running joke in Indonesia. There's this big university, agricultural university, and it's popular for, okay, what would you like to be after graduating? Okay, most of them work as bankers because they're not interested in agriculture anymore. So it's been a joke that, okay, if you go to the university, you will go to the bank eventually. No one go to the farm. Okay, interesting. And how about Bangladesh? Do you face same problem, or do you face a different problem when it comes to sustainable development because you work in education?
Well, similar in that, obviously, I think I'm not as well versed in the agricultural sector, but there is a drive for students to either come from rural areas to Dhaka because all the jobs are here, the well-paid jobs at least. But in the last few years, what I've seen is a good majority of young people wanting to go abroad, and once they go abroad, it's very unlikely that they would come back. So there has been a very steady brain drain from from Bangladesh, that young people are going abroad. So in that context, I do worry that our more informal sector is might be suffering in the next few years if we don't actually properly make investments into the resources and capital that is needed to support these industries. I will speak a little bit about the women businesses thing. It is also a very informal sector. So what we see with that is a good portion of them are well supported, but they don't really receive a lot of support from their families. And we have a entrepreneurship department within the university at Daffodil, and I teach a few classes there sometimes. So what I always hear from female students is there's not a whole lot of support from their families for them to go into business. The expectation is either they get a government job because it's seen as secure, or they get married. So there's not a whole lot of formal support for women either, and I do worry that if this is very prolonged, we might see less women be willing to go into becoming entrepreneurs.
Yeah, that's why inclusion is a long game. We have to play a long game. Okay, so I think this will be the final question for you guys. What lessons would you like to share to the audience? Okay, let's begin with Ms. Judith Mwaniki.
Maybe not exactly a lesson, but more of a commentary.
Okay.
And it's a lot around energy and just energy transition and clean energy, because clean energy is the basis for so many things. And even as we look at tackling climate change, we cannot talk about climate and the effects of climate change if we are not able to tackle or rather ensure provision of clean energy at the very lowest level. But this, of course, means it's now working with the people at the grassroots, especially. And as we look at transition, again, what does that mean to the global south? Even as we look at the energy transition, because the cost of transition is not exactly cheap. It's not exactly reachable or affordable to everybody. And so when you look at maybe moving from firewood to gas, LPG, for instance, when you look at the whole firewood ecosystem, it means, one, if you're able to tackle that, you've stopped deforestation, right? But you've also, on another angle, stopped air pollution from smoke and all that. But there's a third angle of health, the health effects of this smoke to the users. So as we look at development, as we look at pathways to sustainable development, energy plays a central and very critical role in ensuring sustainable development. But then, most importantly, just transition, making this energy affordable and reachable to everybody. And like we said, the whole idea of sustainable development is ensuring we're leaving no one behind.
Okay. Thank you. And
I will say the same thing, like commentary wise. I think if we are hoping to see a more just future, a more just transition towards climate action, I think it's important to keep in mind that we do not leave anyone behind. Obviously, women fall in that, farmers fall in that. They are, even though my expertise doesn't lie in it, they are one of the most vulnerable populations within Bangladesh. So when we're making policies, we need to think about them, but in order to think about them, we need to actually include them in the policy making processes. And without that, we can never ensure equitable decision making and a just transition to a more climate conscious world. So I'm hoping to see that all over the world in the next few years.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Judith, Mwaniki, and Ms. Samiha Khan. So, concluding this discussion, I would like to mention some of the points. First of all, talking about sustainable development, meaning talk about inclusion, because we cannot leave anyone behind, and as all the 17 points of SDGs are interconnected with each other, then we have to focus on those interconnection. And also, we have to change our mindset because, eventually we do not really inherit this the resource from our elders, but rather we borrow it from the next generation. So this concludes the study session of Frankel Conversation with the topic of development for all, pathway to sustainable growth. My name is Ario Bimo, and thank you everyone. Have a good day. And for the audience, thank you and see you. Thank you.